Good evening, welcome back. It's late at night, so you might not see it, but I do it like this. Thank you for joining me today in the reading of God's Word. We're doing Acts chapter 7, starting in verse 1, ending in verse 29. Then the high priest asked Stephen, "Are these accusations true?" This was Stephen's reply: "Brothers and fathers, listen to me. Our glorious God appeared to our ancestors, Abraham, in Mesopotamia, before he settled in Haran. God told him, 'Leave your native land and your relatives, and come into a land that I will show you.' So Abraham left the land of the Chaldeans and lived in Haran until his father died. Then God brought him to the land where we now live. But God gave him no inheritance here, not even 1 square foot of land. God did promise, however, that eventually the whole land would belong to Abraham's descendants, even though he had no children yet. God also told him that his descendants would live in a foreign land where they would be oppressed as slaves for 400 years. "But I will punish the nation that enslaves them," God said, "and, in the end, they will come out and worship me here in this place." God also gave Abraham the covenant of circumcision at that time, so when Abraham became the father of Isaac, he circumcised him on the eighth day. And the practice was continued when Isaac became the father of Jacob, and when Jacob became the father of the 12 patriarchs of the Israelite nation. These patriarchs were jealous of their brother Joseph, and they sold him to be a slave in Egypt. But God was with him, and rescued him from all his troubles. And God gave him favor before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. God also gave Joseph unusual wisdom, so that Pharaoh anointed him governor over all Egypt, and put him in charge of the palace. But a famine came over Egypt and Canaan. There were great misery There was great misery, and our ancestors ran out of food. Jacob heard that there was still grain in Egypt, so he sent his sons, our ancestors, to buy some. The second time they went, Joseph revealed his identity to his brothers, and they were introduced to Pharaoh. Then Joseph sent for his father, Jacob, and all his relatives to come to Egypt, 75 people in all. So Jacob went to Egypt. He died there, as did our ancestors. Their bodies were taken to Shechem and buried in the tomb Abraham had bought for a certain price from Hamor's sons in Shechem. As the time drew near, when God would fulfill his promise to Abraham, the number of our people in Egypt greatly increased. But then a new king came to the throne of Egypt, who knew nothing about Joseph. This king exploited our people and oppressed them, forcing parents to abandon their newborn babies so that they would die. At that time Moses was born, a beautiful child in God's eyes. His parents cared for him at home for 3 months. When they had to abandon him, Pharaoh's daughter adopted him and raised him as her own son. Moses was taught all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and he was powerful in both speech and action. One day, when Moses was 40 years old, he decided to visit his relatives, the people of Israel. He saw an Egyptian mistreating an Israelite, so Moses came to the man's defense and avenged him, killing the Egyptian. Moses assured his fellow Israelites would realize that God had sent him to rescue them, but they did not. Excuse me. Moses assumed his fellow Israelites would realize that God had sent him to rescue them, but they did not. The next day he visited them again and saw 2 men of Israel fighting. He tried to be a peacemaker. "Men," he said, "we are brothers. Why are we fighting each other?" But the men on the wrong pushed Moses aside. "Who made you a ruler and judge over us?" he asked. "Are you going to kill me as you killed that Egyptian yesterday?" When Moses heard that, he fled the country and lived as a foreigner in the land of Midian. There his 2 sons were born. The reading of Psalm. 127, verses 1 through 5. Unless the Lord builds a house, the work of the builders is wasted. Unless the Lord protects a city, guarding it with sentries will do no good. It is useless for you to work so hard from early morning until late at night, anxiously working for food to eat, for God has given rest to his loved ones. Children are a gift from the Lord. They are a reward from him. Children born to a young man are like arrows in a warrior's hands. How joyful is the man whose quiver is full of them! He will not be put to shame when he confronts his accusers at the city gates. This evening we also have a song. It's called My Country 'Tis of Thee. Our fathers, God to thee, author of liberty, to thee we sing. Long may our land be bright, with freedom's holy light. Protect us by thy might, great God our King. That's just verse 4. They only included verse 4. So I remember singing as a child in public school here in America. I hope you join me tomorrow as we read God's Word.